So, Batman Caped Crusader just wrapped up its second season. And let's be honest, over the past 20 episodes, Bruce Timm's team gives us an enormous chunk of Batman's rogues gallery with a 1940s noir-themed Gotham. This show is truly something. Speaking of the roster, we have notable villains like Two-Face, Penguin, Riddler, as well as D-listers like Nocturna, King Tut, the Mad Monk, etc., to name a few of the notable villains in the show. All in all, the show has it all. So join us as we go through every single villain the Caped Crusader has thrown at Gotham so far. Joe Chill. Joe Chill doesn't have a speaking role in the show, but he makes the biggest impact on Batman out of all the villains. After all, he is the mugger who shot Thomas and Martha Wayne in front of young Bruce. We see him grouped in the show's own credits alongside other non-speaking cameo appearances, including a Daily Planet photographer named Jimmy Olsen, who shows up as a quiet Superman universe Easter egg elsewhere in Season 1. While we never get to see Chill in the actual storyline as a present-day threat, the pain he has caused Bruce Wayne stays with Batman in every scene, because without Joe Chill, there's no Batman.
To remember the day that he went.
Rupert Thorne, voiced by Cedric Yarbrough. Rupert Thorne is the main antagonist in the first season of the show. He is a politically connected crime boss who controls Mayor Yesop even before the season begins. And when Batman takes Penguin's operations off the board, Thorne seizes the opportunity and extends his territory. When Harvey Dent was a mayor candidate, he accepted a donation from Thorne, which in turn played a big role in the creation of Two-Face when Dent refused Thorne's later condition. What I'm trying to say is that Thorne is behind most of the problems in Batman's life as of right now. And after Harvey's death at the docks, Batman threw a batarang through Thorne's window as a direct warning that Batman knows Thorne's behind all of it. In the second season, Thorne stands trial for his crime and basically uses all of his wealth to evade the sentence he deserves. Even though there was overwhelming evidence against him, he was able to get away scot-free. Well, at least that's what he thought. He got in the car after getting out of the courthouse and started laughing. At first, it was a glee, but soon it turned out deadly because surprise, surprise, the chauffeur of his car, that's actually Joker. And Joker basically poisoned him with laughing toxin after extracting necessary information from Thorne and his son, Oswald Cobblepot, or the Penguin. I don't know about you, but I genuinely didn't think I would enjoy this version of Penguin as much as I did. Minnie Driver gives a stellar performance as this gender-switch version of Oswald Cobblepot, our favorite Penguin-themed crime boss. Here, she sings at her own club and is another main antagonist of the series. At least, in the premiere, we see that she has turf wars with Rupert Thorne with her two sons, Aaron and Ronald Cobblepot, both voiced by Paul Scheer. Penguin's gang mostly included lower-level members like Clarence, so when you see her in action, it really feels like you are watching an organized crime family in action. In the premiere of the show, we see Batman dismantling her operations. As a result, there's a massive power vacuum in Gotham's underworld, which Thorne used to his benefit. So basically, Oswalda's defeat is the direct cause of everything we see happen in Season 1. It is a shame that we do not see her return for Season 2 at all. Harvey Dent, or Two-Face. Harvey Dent is a smug but straight-laced district attorney. He is also a close friend of Bruce Wayne and eventually decides to run for mayor of Gotham. But becoming mayor is not so easy. He was desperate for the funding to win, and in that desperation, he took a donation from Thorne. Thorne later cashed that in by asking him to drop the charges against a friend of the crime boss. Dent refused, and when he did, Thorne's enforcer, Tony Zito, showed up and threw a flask of acid on Dent's face. I, for one, really like this new take because usually Harvey Dent becomes Two-Face because of a random accident. But here, he becomes that by trying to do the right thing. And doing the right thing caused the right half of his face to be permanently scared. He also lost his mayoral bid, and everything Dent had going for him goes down the gutter. He becomes insecure and paranoid, which I cannot fault him for, because I probably would have had a crash out too. Bruce hosts a night to cheer Dent up, but it only makes things worse, and eventually Dent decides to go on a brutal and personal killing spree against Thorne's mane. It is certainly a more grounded take on Harvey Dent, and I quite like it. Eventually, before Dent can hurt Thorne, Batman intervenes, and Dent willingly turns himself in to Arkham Asylum, and Barbara Gordon is assigned to be his lawyer. Harvey then sacrifices himself to save Barbara from Arnold Flash, which closed out his story in the first season of the show and genuinely changed how Batman would operate going forward. Diedrich Bader really embodies Harvey Dent throughout the storyline, and if you have a heart, you will share a tear when Dent dies. Basil Karlo, or Clayface. Next on our list, we have Basil Karlo, a disgruntled but talented actor, voiced by Dan Donahue. Basil takes a genetic altering serum to mold his face into different forms. He comes into our radar when GCPD detective Renee Montoya is assigned to find missing actress Yvonne Francis. She interrogates Bruce Wayne too, but it fails, and eventually, as she investigates the matter further, she starts suspecting Carlo's fellow actor. Seems like that fellow lied in his alibi, but before she could confirm things, the man was murdered. Eventually, through some further digging, we find out that Carlo was ashamed of his own face, as he often got typecast in Hollywood. He tried to approach Francis with some romantic intentions, but she shut him down rather quickly. So, in his moment of weakness, Carlo took the serum, faked his death, and then kidnapped Francis. All because he really wanted to play a villain, and he was down to be a villain in real life if Hollywood wasn't gonna give him the chance. I really liked this episode, as this felt genuinely like a legitimate detective story instead of being a typical monster of the week kind of thing. Eventually, Montoya and Batman managed to connect all the dots and show up to save the day, with Montoya rescuing Francis while Batman defeated Carlo in direct confrontation. Sadly, before Carlo could be taken by Montoya, he disappeared. Selena Kyle, Catwoman. Christina Ricci voices Selena Kyle, which feels like a lucky day for me. I have always been partial to Catwoman, and ever since her performance as Wednesday Addams, I have been a big fan of Christina Ricci. Fanboying aside, Selena is an heiress who first crossed paths with Bruce at the museum showing off Gotham's elite jewels, and understandably, she has an interest in his late mother's pearls. Around the same time, Bruce is ordered to attend a month of therapy with Dr. Harley Quinn after he assaulted a patron who insulted his parents, which is an easy-to-miss thread tying Catwoman and Harley Quinn's stories together. Soon after, Kyle's father is arrested, and his company is seized. So Kyle resorts to jewel theft to fund her lifestyle. This is where she adopts the persona of Catwoman. She is soon caught and outed by Batman, but instead of learning her lesson, she takes inspirations from him and upgrades her own car and gadgets before Harvey, who was the district attorney at the time, bails her out. Bruce figures that Kyle would go for his mother's pearl and closes the museum early to lure her out. The trap works and Kyle is caught. However, when she is caught, she is very flirty towards Batman. You know, I'm hoping something will come out of it later. But as of the end of Season 1, Kyle is left destitute and in jail because her maid, Greta, sold everything off and refused to bail her out. Dr. Harley Quinn, or Harley Quinn. Dr. Harley Quinn is a psychiatrist to Gotham's elite in this show with zero connection to Joker. Played by Jamie Chung, this Harley Quinn is a villain in her own way. Barbara Gordon noticed something was off when, out of nowhere, several wealthy businessmen abruptly donated their fortunes to charity and vanished. As the investigation went on, we found out that Quinzel has actually adopted a just-alike Harley Quinn persona and is basically subjecting all of these men to immense psychological torture using all the insider knowledge she has as their psychiatrist. Her goal is simple. She wants to correct their minds. Barbara and Batman track to the basement of one of her patients, where Quinzel is overpowered and knocked unconscious right before the house was meant to detonate. Batman managed to save Barbara, but it is assumed that Quinzel died from a fatal fall. Harley survived, and upon her survival, she called Renee Montoya and canceled their date because she had to leave Gotham temporarily. In Season 2, Quinzel returns when there's a string of mysterious student deaths at Gotham University. She and Batman join hands to defeat Scarecrow, which proves to be the best alliance possible, as her own psychiatric expertise can directly help counter the fear toxin Scarecrow keeps generously bestowing upon his victims. Fletcher Deming, or King Tut. No one could have voiced Fletcher Deming better than David Krumholtz. And I mean it. Fletcher is a selfish man who genuinely believes he is Egyptian royalty reincarnated thanks to Quinzel's brainwashing. And he isn't the only one who feels that way, because Emerson Collins, another man voiced by Jim Peary, also thought that he's a king in his own right. Together, Deming and Collins function as just how far Quinzel's brainwashing torture had gone before Barbara and Batman caught up to her. Now, the reason Deming is on our list is because Harley's larger scheme. Here, King Tut doesn't do King Tut's things in the traditional comic book sense. Instead, here, he is a victim who is caught in someone else's plan and becomes a pawn. Onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia has a gimmick, and as you may have guessed already, but this gimmick of his is played for both menace and dark comedy, and Wright Scott makes it feel appropriate in every scene. See, Gordon starts to fear that a big bounty has been placed on his head when Onomatopoeia and Floyd Lawton arrive in Gotham. Lawton could have taken the shot, but he hesitated, and Gordon was escorted to a safe house at Wayne Garden, much to his chagrin. But there, Onomatopoeia's group tracked him down. In the meantime, Batman learned that the hit was placed by a Blackgate penitentiary inmate named Mueller, and managed to intervene and save the day. After getting rid of the attackers, Batman revealed to Gordon that the actual target was Barbara, who was almost killed by someone else. As for Mueller, he did all of this because he wasn't happy with Barbara's defense in the court. He felt that she didn't do a good job, and that's how he ended up in jail. Basically, petty revenge. Floyd Lawton. Floyd Lawton is a mercenary who came to Gotham with Onomatopoeia, played by Roger Craig Smith. This character has a minor cameo role. He could have killed Gordon, but he hesitated. He is pretty bad at his job, and then he pretty much has no relation to whatever plays out next. But the strangest thing about the character has to be that the show never once uses his comic book code name, Deadshot, even though the character is clearly drawn from that source material. So I have a feeling the showrunners are holding back on us because there's a possibility in the future to have a proper Deadshot story down the line. Jim Corrigan. Imagine being introduced to a group of cops and not one of them is corrupt. That's impossible. And Jim Corrigan, voiced yet again by Roger Craig Smith, is exactly that. We learn that he was actually after the bounty placed on Barbara on Season 1 because he was actually trying to attack her. But Jim Gordon came to the rescue at the right time and gave him a very fitting ending. But then he returns in the second season in the episode titled The Spectral Hand, written by veteran comics writer J.M. DeMatteis. This episode shows us Spectre as an old-school pulp horror or radio drama with the character's classic scarf and trenchcoat look. James Jim Craddock, or Gentleman Ghost. Who would have thought we would hear Toby Stephens voicing Jim Craddock? I certainly didn't, but hey, it suits him. Jim Craddock is this crook 18th century aristocrat who basically robs Gotham's working class and middle class as a spectral apparition. Imagine dying and still picking pockets. Couldn't be me. Anyway, as luck would have it, he returns right when Harvey was running to be a mayor. And because of all these robberies under his watch, Harvey was back into a corner that led him to accepting Thorne's donation in the first place. Batman, who is aware of everything, investigates and struggles to fight the ghost directly. Eventually, he found out that the spirit is actually tied to a property that Craddock owned once, which is now owned by Bruce's friend, Lucius Fox. So Batman turns to Linton Papa Midnight, who is a voodoo shaman. Papa tells him that sacrificing the old property's deed along with the blood of a nobleman is the only way to get rid of Craddock's for good. Batman manages to do the ritual using Alfred's blood Since he's a nobleman, after burning half of the deed, Craddock's possessed Alfred as a last-ditch effort to stop, but Batman manages to seal Craddock's inside a vial after burning the whole deed, which he then passes off to Papa for safekeeping. While all of this is happening, Dent eventually accepts the donation, which we know is bad news for everyone. Joe Rigger, or Firebug. Joe Rigger is a masked criminal whose hobby is arson. Like, I mean it. He has an uncontrollable compulsion to set fires. Voiced by Tom Kenny, Joe Rigger is actually used as bait to lure Batman out when Mayor Jessup wants Batman to be hunted. Batman shows up to save civilians from the fire, managing to evade the corrupt SWAT officers, Bullocks and Flash, who set Rigger out in the first place. Gordon, who didn't want any of this in the first place, helps Batman save all the civilians. When this plan didn't work out the way they had originally thought it would, Bullock and Flash killed Rigger to get rid of the loose end. Eventually, Bullock and Flash are made the heads of the task force sent to capture Batman, while Gordon barely keeps his job.
There you are.
Natalia Knight, or Nocturna. Natalia Knight is a girl with a mysterious condition which gives her enhanced strength and forces her to drain energy from other people. We see her in the middle of a fundraiser carnival held for Harvey Dent's mayoral campaign, where several orphans are reported missing over the same night. Batman gets into investigating and finds out that all of these disappearances are caused by Natalia, voiced by McKenna Grace, who is the sister of an inventor named Anton Knight, voiced by Haley Joel Osment. Anton finds out what Natalia has been doing, and understandably, he doesn't think this is right. Natalia feels that Anton is trying to control her, which causes a huge fallout between them. Natalia goes on to attack her victims and is stopped when Batman intercepts her directly. Turns out, Natalia actually injured her brother gravely in their fight. Anton begs Batman with his last remaining strength to stop Natalia before dying, and Batman does exactly that. He takes her to safety once he understands what is happening to her, treating her like a human instead of a monster. Waylon Jones, or Killer Croc, also voiced by Cedric Yarbrough. Killer Croc shows up in the first season of the show and a minor cameo as a muscular circus performer. You recognize him because of his reptilian features, and eventually in the season, we see him physically beat up Bruce Wayne at one point. Even though he has no name check or storyline beyond this one brief on-screen presence, we felt that it was important to recognize him as one of the rogues, so that's why he is here. The Joker, barely seen, already terrifying. He is absent for almost all of Season 1 and shows up in the finale's closing scene. Inside an old tool shed, Batman and we find out a string of victims whose faces have been contorted into horrifying half-smiles because of the laughing toxin. From the shadow, Joker emerges, saying "perfect" in a deep voice as he watches his experiment succeed. In this brief scene, he is voiced by John DiMaggio, who also voiced Detective Bullock. Even though this was a very brief scene, you could tell right off the bat that he is cold and calculating instead of being a goofy, clacking version we have gotten until now. Then we get him in the second season, voiced by Matthew Needham from House of the Dragon. The showrunners specifically wanted him to portray Joker as this colder, calmer Joker who moves with real intent. We even see him gun down Mr. Zero with a sniper before the frozen villain could reveal Joker as the mastermind who urged him to preserve Thorne and his son's bodies. This Joker also murdered Hugo Strange to steal the Blockbuster serum formula, and we also see him inject Haiti Tetch with his own toxin. Later, we see Joker kill off Mayor Jessup in the season end, a harrowing escalation from a character who spent almost the entirety of Season 1 as a rumor. Edward Nygma, or the Riddler. Edward Nygma, voiced by Ronan Raftery, has to be the biggest reinvention of a marquee villain. In the comics, he is a puzzle-obsessed intellectual, but in the show, he is Rupert Thorne's lieutenant, who is known as the Riddler because he just loves riddling anyone who pisses him off with bullets. He does the theatrical cackle in the classic Riddle's way, but he is definitely a new invention of the character. After Thorne's disappearance, Nigma seized control of Gotham's underworld for himself, running it with unpredictability and ruthlessness. He eventually kills police officer Phil Forrest, not realizing the consequences of his action. His victim's daughter is none other than Rose Forrest, who spends her own episode getting close to Nigma to avenge her father's killing and eventually bring his crime boss era to an end. Rose Forrest, or Thorn. Introduced in her own episode, Rose Forrest is credited as Thorn, which is an obscure DC identity, fusing two different comic characters who have used the same name over the decades. After seeing her father's death, she develops a second personality, and this Thorn personality only emerges once Rose falls asleep, and she is driven entirely by a need to avenge that murder and no other villainous agenda. She spends the episode committing crimes alongside Nigma, gaining his trust, basically working as a femme fatale, and then she kills him. Initially, given her visuals, she was assumed to be Poison Ivy, but then we get the reveal that she is Thorn, not Ivy. In the end, Rose boards a train out of Gotham and her destination is left unnamed, leaving the door open for her return in a future season. Haiti Thatch, Mad Hatter. We have Haiti Thatch, the gender-swapped Mad Hatter, voiced by Lorraine Newman. She hosts her own television segment, Haiti's Tea Party, which is one of the Caped Crusader's cleverest reinterpretations of a classic character. She basically uses her media platform and devoted viewership to run an anti-Batman and anti-GCPD agenda, which is a clear nod to the character's traditional mind control gimmick. She openly claims Gotham will believe whatever she tells them, which doesn't feel far off from our own reality. One reviewer actually compared her to J. Jonah Jameson, the way she keeps berating Batman. Her run eventually comes to an end when Joker injects her with his own toxin partway through the season and hijacks her own show to address all of Gotham, basically turning her into his personal weapon in one move. Jonathan Crane Jr., or Scarecrow. Jonathan Crane Jr. is a young psychology student played by Josh Brenner, who was reviving his own fear gas when a string of student deaths drew attention to him. The episode initially suspected an unrelated, unpleasant professor, which made everyone believe that he was actually Dr. Crane, mentioned back in Season 1. But then the twist comes that, actually, it is his nerdy student who is wreaking all of this havoc. When Scarecrow hits Batman with his toxin, Batman hallucinates a genuinely unusual fear of the character because he sees himself as an old man lying in a safe white room, which is a twist on decades of prior takes on Batman's confrontation with this villain. Despite being affected by the toxin, Batman, Harley Quinn, and a fellow student managed to counter it using a chemical found in ordinary whole milk, which is a nice twist. Roxy Sutton, or Roxy Rocket. Roxy Rocket, voiced by Wunmi Mosaku, was a character originally created by Bruce Timm and Paul Dini for the DC animated universe. She is a brilliant rocket scientist, betrayed by her own business partners who want to sell her genius work for lucrative military contracts. Roxy is obviously not cool with that, and so she builds an advanced flight suit clearly inspired by the Rocketeers to strike back at them. She initially clashes with Batman, who has no reason to trust her, but once he learns the truth behind her motivations, they join hands to defeat the greater evil. The Triad. Roxy's previous business partners are known as the Triad, which Golden Age Batman fans know is a nod to the terrible trio, Fox, Vulture, and Shark. Their individual appearances subtly refer to these three animals, and Roxy herself gave them those animal names during the investigation. Together, the Triad exists to give Roxy's story an emotional engine because they are the reason why she became a custom revenger in the first place. Mark Desmond, or Blockbusters. Next on our list, we have Mark Desmond, voiced by Zach Hoffman, who turns into a hulking monster, Blockbuster, after Nigma injects him with a serum stolen from Hugo Strange. From his design, you can tell he is very similar to Solomon Grundy, but the show explicitly tells us that he is Blockbuster. After Batman beats him back down to human form using his own car, Des is taken to Blackgate Penitentiary, where Bruce Wayne, under his Matthews Malone undercover disguise, befriends him and learns more about Riddler's operation. When Nigma puts a hit on Des' head, Bruce and Des break out of the prison together, only for Nigma to track Des down and personally kill him after the escape. A tragic end to a tragic character, if you ask me. Professor Hugo Strange. Hugo Strange is one of Batman's oldest comic book foes who appears very briefly in this season, voiced by James Urbaniak. He provides Nigma with the experimental serum, wanting to see the result of this field test instead of testing it in a lab under controlled conditions. By the end of the same episode, we found out that Strange has been murdered by the Joker. So basically, his entire function across the season is to hand off a plot-critical piece of technology and demonstrate just how far ahead of everyone else this version of Joker is. It is brutally efficient, but I kind of like that. Julian Calendar Man Gregory. Voiced by J.P. Cadliac, this character is not a traditional villain at all. Julian is reimagined as Thorne's own accountant and financial expert, who has a sharp memory for numbers and dates, and eventually he testifies against his former boss. The moment he became a key witness, he became a major target for anyone hoping to silence him before he could take the stand. Nigma and Desmond try several times to kill him before the testimony happens, only for Batman to protect him. In the end, he takes the stand, but that wasn't enough to put Thorne behind bars because of how deep corruption runs in Gotham courts. The Mad Monk and the Cult of Barbatos. Created by Sheldon Moldoff, Bob Kane, and Gardner Fox back in 1939, the Mad Monk is one of Batman's earliest supernatural foes. He is a vampire-like criminal with hypnotic abilities. In Caped Crusader, the Mad Monk, voiced by Bleeth Millen, runs a cult called Brotherhood of the Eternal Night, worshipping a dark bad god named Barbatos, who eventually became a big part of Batman lore thanks to the Dark Knight's Metal comic storyline. Basically, in the show, he's a con man who is simply manipulating his followers, which our heroes eventually dismantles. Victor Fries, or Mr. Zero. Kevin Michael Richardson plays Victor Fries in a single episode titled 0 Hour, which is Fry's Golden Age comic book alias. In the show, Batman and Carrie Kelly, dressed as the Grey Ghost, the same hero who inspired Bruce Wayne to become Batman in the past DC animated project, confront Mr. Zero to find out who paid him to freeze the body of Rupert Thorne and his son. And then we know what happened. This is a short appearance, but it is consequential for us to understand just how insane and calculating the show's Joker can be when push comes to shove. Man-Bat. Man-Bat actually shows up on the screen for a split second right after Batman punched the Riddler. In the comics, Man-Bat is scientist Kirk Langstorm, who tested a serum derived from bats on himself and gained the ability to change between human and a bat humanoid form. In the show, however, Man-Bat's appearance is more just about giving us a nod that, hey, they remembered. They remembered the character and referenced it. Harvey Bullock and Arnold Flash. John DiMaggio and Gary Anthony Williams truly made my blood boils as Harvey Bullock and Arnold Flash. They show up in both seasons, and even though Flash was responsible for shooting Harvey Dent during the Ducks confrontation, Flash kept his job while Bullock got a demotion for the same era of corruption. In the second season, Flash is the key target of internal suspicion when it comes to corruption in the police department. But he also gains the trust of Mayor Jessup, who is just as corrupt as he is. Both of these characters are more like standing obstacles sitting inside the same police department that should be stopping Gotham's actual criminal and making everyone's lives harder. And that brings us to the end of our video. In just 20 episodes, the Caped Crusader has given us roughly 30 named villains with interesting and fresh interpretation of fan-favorite characters. Enough to make old-time fans feel interested while keeping the new fans hooked to the show. Overall, I would say the showrunners did a wonderful job giving us this amazing blend, and I, for one, cannot wait for the next season to come out. Let me know what you guys think about the show in the comments down below. Like and subscribe as always, and I will see you guys the next time.